The morning sunlight filtered through the high-rise glass windows of Oryx Industries, turning the lobby floor into a golden reflection that looked too clean, too perfect for someone like a man in a faded uniform to belong in. Yet that man, Arvin Hale, walked across it every day before the world arrived, pushing his cart, humming softly so he wouldn't hear the hollow echo of his own exhaustion. But this morning, the echo was louder. Because this was the day he would take a bullet that was never meant for him, the day everything he knew about struggle, sacrifice, and dignity would collide with the life of a man who lived 30 floors above him in a corner office of steel and power. And no one, not even Arvin himself, could imagine how that single moment would transform an entire company forever. If you believe in kindness, humanity, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your one click inspires more stories like this. Arvin's day usually started at 5 a.m. He got his 7-year-old daughter, Ruby Hale, ready for school, braided her hair with clumsy fingers, packed her lunch, and left her with the neighbor before rushing to the downtown tower where he worked as a janitor. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him with a tired heart, unpaid medical bills, and a daughter who looked too much like the woman he had lost. Ruby had her mother's eyes, bright hazel, hopeful, too innocent for the weight life had put on their family. Every day Arvin reminded himself that all the humiliation he swallowed, all the hours he scrubbed floors while the world slept, were for Ruby. She was his only anchor in a world that kept tugging him under. While Arvin worked silently in the background, the CEO of Oryx Industries, Caspian Rourke, was a man whose footsteps made the building tremble. His name alone carried weight, employees whispered it like a command. Caspian was known for fierce ambition, sharp decisions, and an image carved from authority. But behind all that, he carried a private grief. His own brother had been kidnapped and murdered during a corporate rivalry 5 years earlier, and from that day onward Caspian never trusted anyone easily. His walls were high, his circle small, and his heart locked behind a fortress no one could climb. At least, that was what people believed. Their worlds were never meant to cross. But fate has a way of folding two distant lives together in the most unexpected moments. That moment arrived on a bright weekday morning at 10:17 a.m. Arvin was mopping the floors outside the executive corridor. He had just tightened Ruby's hair ribbon in his mind, a memory he returned to whenever work felt too heavy, when a sharp commotion broke his thoughts. 2 men in dark jackets stormed through the elevator entrance. Their movements were too deliberate, too angry, too loud for any normal visitor. And when Arvin saw the metallic flash in one of their hands, his breath froze. A gun. One of the men shouted Caspian's name. Employees screamed. Desks toppled. The air filled with panic, the kind that tightens your lungs and dilates your fear until it becomes bigger than your own body. Caspian stepped out of his office, confusion turning to shock in seconds when he saw the weapon pointed directly at him. The 2 intruders were part of an extremist group targeting the company after a failed business deal ripped their families apart. They wanted revenge, and Caspian was their trophy. Arvin should have run. Everyone else did. But something inside him, a father's instinct, a human instinct, reacted before his mind could even form a thought. He saw the line of fire, saw where the weapon was aimed, and saw no one between Caspian and a bullet that could end everything. Without thinking, Arvin dropped the mop, sprinted forward, and threw himself between the gunman and the CEO. The gunshot cracked like a lightning strike through glass. Arvin's chest burned. His breath thinned. Everything became slow, heavy, unreal. Caspian caught him as he fell, the shock on the powerful CEO's face something no boardroom had ever seen. Blood soaked into Caspian's tailored suit as Arvin's body went limp. Security tackled the attackers, but Caspian barely noticed. He only saw the man who had stepped into death's path for him, a stranger, a janitor, someone the company had never truly seen. Arvin was rushed to the hospital. For hours, Caspian sat outside the emergency ward, still wearing Arvin's blood, refusing to speak to anyone. The entire building was in lockdown. News reporters crowded the entrance. But Caspian ignored everything except the thought that he had survived because a man who earned 1/100th of his salary had chosen to give everything to protect him. Arvin's surgery took 5 hours. When the doctor finally emerged and announced that Arvin would survive, Caspian felt a breath leave his chest, a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He insisted on paying every medical bill, demanded the best care, and refused to leave until Arvin woke up. 2 days later, Arvin opened his eyes. The room was softly lit by the morning sun, turning everything warm. Caspian was sitting in the chair beside him, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Arvin blinked, confused and groggy, and whispered one thing, "Is Ruby okay?" Caspian had never been caught off guard in his life as much as he was in that moment. The man who had nearly died wasn't asking for pain relief or explanations. He was asking about his child. Caspian softly told him that Ruby was safe and staying with their neighbor, and that his company had sent a representative to check on her every day. A fragile breath escaped Arvin's lips, a breath of relief strong enough to bring tears to the CEO's eyes. In that brief exchange, something shifted in Caspian's heart, an unfamiliar tug he hadn't felt in years. It was empathy, respect, gratitude, something deeper than corporate alliances or professional loyalties. In the following days, Caspian visited Arvin every morning. They spoke for the first time like two human beings stripped of titles and uniforms. Arvin narrated how he ended up working as a janitor after losing his wife. He explained the weight of medical debts, the nights he went hungry so Ruby wouldn't, and how he always feared failing her. Caspian listened silently, each word shaking the walls he'd built around his own grief. Arvin's story reminded him of love, loss, and the parts of life money couldn't shield. When Arvin was discharged, Caspian personally arranged transportation for him and Ruby. He even visited their small apartment, simple, worn, but filled with warmth. Seeing Ruby jump into her father's arms with tears of joy carved something permanent in Caspian's heart. That night, Caspian made a decision that would ripple through Oriox Industries like a cleansing wave. The next week, Caspian called an all-staff meeting. Employees filled the auditorium, buzzing with curiosity. Caspian stepped on stage, his voice steady yet emotional. He recounted the day Arvin saved his life, how a janitor had shown courage beyond measure, and how the company had failed to see the humanity of people working in its shadows. Then he announced something no one expected. A new company policy. Every worker, from janitors to cafeteria chefs to security guards, would receive full health coverage, educational benefits for their children, mental health support, and an emergency assistance program for struggling families. Caspian declared that Oriox Industries would become a company that cared about every life beneath its roof. When the applause died down, Caspian invited Arvin on stage. Arvin walked slowly, still healing, Ruby holding his hand. The audience stood as he approached, their claps echoing like thunder. Arvin felt overwhelmed by the lights, the attention, the gratitude. He wasn't used to being seen. For the first time, someone acknowledged his worth not just as a worker but as a human being. Caspian placed a hand on his shoulder and announced one more change. Arvin Hale was being promoted to the position of Employee Welfare Coordinator, a role designed specifically for him, where he would advocate for workers, ensure they were heard, and help them access company resources. His salary multiplied. His debts vanished. His daughter's future shone brighter than the glass windows Arvin once polished. But the transformation didn't end with policies or promotions. Caspian himself changed. He began walking the floors of the company, greeting employees, listening to their stories. The old executive corridor no longer felt like a restricted kingdom. It became a place of connection. And Arvin, with his quiet heart and humble strength, became a symbol of kindness within the tower. Workers trusted him, felt safe with him, and found hope in his journey. Even security officers who once barely noticed him now treated him with genuine respect. Ruby